It's okay, you can admit it. There's probably some times where you get really bored of the message or the platform you're putting out there. Whether you're doing it for yourself or for an organization, there are certain times when it just feels like what you're putting out there is really flat. So how do we add variety to the message or the platform? Well, good news, the answer is right outside your window. I'm Tamsin Webster of tamsinwebster.com, and this is Find the Red Thread. First thing, don't worry, it is completely normal to occasionally get really sick and tired of the message that you're putting out there. It happens to all of us. It's particularly easy to happen if all we're working with is a tagline or maybe just slightly better, a positioning statement. That's because those things often focus on surface details and they don't give us a roadmap for what we could potentially talk about. But when we really think more deeply about what we can offer, then we have more detail we can add. The way to think about this is the more dimension we can see, the more detail we can provide. Great, fine, Tamsin, what does that mean? Well, here I want you to look out your window. And what I mean by looking out your window is picture a view that you see all the time. You see the view I see all the time right outside behind me, and that's a view of the Boston skyline. But yours may look different. It may be your view from your window. It may be a standard view from your car as you're commuting. Maybe it's the view to your backyard as you're standing over the kitchen sink. Either way, haven't you noticed that sometimes you just stop seeing the view? Well, this is exactly the same thing that happens to our messages. And yet, if you really think about it, there's any number of individual little stories that can still be told, even if the frame doesn't change. So if I'm describing to you what's happening outside my window, if I've gotten to that one-dimensional place with my message, I can say, oh, that's Boston. But if I really start to look at it again and start to look at all the dimensions that are existing within that stationary view, I can start to pick up more detail. I could, for instance, tell you about all the different buildings that are there. I could tell you how certain buildings have shown up in the last few years and other ones weren't. I could talk about the people who move through it. I could focus on the color. I could focus on the story of one particular building. I could focus on how that view looks different from morning to night. Now, this is all metaphorical, of course, but it can relate to the same thing that's happening with your message. Because just like I could describe the buildings, you could talk about the building blocks. What are some of the core components of your business, your organization, your tool, your service that people may not be thinking about or that may not be thinking about all the time? You could tell the story of people using some of your products and services. You could talk about something historic, how things have changed over time. You could focus on specific aspects of certain details about why you do what you do. And where do those details come from? Well, those details come from all the different ways you get to the red thread of your work and your life, or the red thread of your organization. One of the first places is to think through those questions of who are you for and what are the universal questions that they want answers to. How could you describe the view of your message through the lens of why? What are all the whys sitting out there? What are all the what nows? What are all the ideas? What are the core beliefs and values? Could you put a number of what now messages out there? And what how messages are there? Which ones haven't you told yet? Now, by and large, you probably have told a lot of how messages, but I'm going to guess that the what nows and the whys are a little bit neglected. You can also back up and look at the individual pieces of the red thread. Let's talk about the various goals that all different segments of your market might have, and then think through all the different ways that they may express that. You can talk about different ways to validate those goals, different barriers that they're looking at. And all of that adds up to different problems. Are there different ways to characterize the problems that you solve? Or are there different problems that you solve for different groups of people? You do the same thing with your ideas. You can do the same thing with the change. You can focus the change on a high-level approach. You can also focus it on very tactical descriptions of why your products or services are different fundamentally than other people's. But the view outside that window, the view and the dimension possible in your message is much richer than we often give it credit for. So next time you're trying to figure out, well, gosh, what do I write about now? What do I talk about now? Go check out the view. I'm Tamsin Webster of tamsinwebster.com, and this is Find the Red Thread.